Hello, thank you for joining us. We're going to be discussing the seventh chapter of Sefer Daniel, as well as the chiastic structure of the first seven prakim of the book. We will also touch upon the commentary of Sir Isaac Newton. Enjoy.
Okay, so we're going to get started. The first part of the shir tonight is just a little bit of introduction. So we're going to be talking about the seventh parak of Daniel. The seventh parak of Daniel is unlike anything that has come before. So the first six prakim were all story time. They were all third person. Things are happening to Daniel. He's a character in the story. Versus seventh parak is now first person Daniel giving a first person account of visions that he himself has seen. Starting with the seventh parak and going through the rest of the book, it's going to be more of that. We'll get some of Daniel's tefillot, but a lot of it is these visions. And those visions have been fodder not just for Jewish commentaries, but Christian commentaries as well, to the point where Sir Isaac Newton, who you may recall from your Physics 101, actually wrote a commentary on the visions of Daniel. And it is available for those of you who are listening online. You can go to archive.org and find it there. Observations upon the prophecies of Daniel and the apocalypse of St. John. The Christian, John basically wrote a book in the Christian canon called Revelations, which is sort of like a reworking of the seventh parak of Daniel. One of the reasons that is going to become very relevant is because there is content in this parak which the Christians used. I think they use it less today, but they did use back then to say that there was a very direct reference to Jesus in Tanakh, and we'll see that in this parak as well. Before we get into the actual parak itself, what I want to do is sort of sketch out as Darkenu Bakodesh the history of what we've done so far in Daniel. We're going to skip the first parak, and the reason for that will become obvious hopefully soon, but I'm going to do some diagramming, and again, all you people who are listening don't get the benefit of the diagram.
You could always take a snap.
Yeah, we'll take a picture.
Show it out. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay, and the reason for the diagram will become clear hopefully very soon. So we're going to start with the second parak, and what I'm going to do is just draw some boxes that have kind of the highlights of each parak, and then I'm hoping that we'll sort of see why this all makes sense. So let's start with parak 2. So some of the things that we have in parak 2 are let's go through what the parak was, right? The parak was the Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah. I'm sorry, the second parak is Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Maybe he doesn't remember the dream. He's very distraught. He needs someone to interpret it for him. No one's able to interpret it. Finally, Daniel's able to interpret it. Right. Daniel's able to interpret it for him. In his dream, he has this vision of a statue. The statue represents these four kingdoms, and then the statue gets destroyed, and that is the foretelling of the eventual kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? We're all in agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have, let's say, dream. He can't understand it, so he gets, he's very scared, right? King is scared. We need Daniel to interpret. Four kingdoms, that's a big deal. Okay, that's parak Beis. Anything else we want to throw in this box? Should I write bigger?
The king threatened the interpreters with death. Does that count? Does that matter?
Yeah, I think it's. Hey, awesome! Look at that. Breaks the sound barrier.
Is the tshuva important or not?
The tshuva.
That's
That's
later.
not here. We'll get to that in the fourth parak. So what we're doing is just diagramming out.
No, but he admits to God's greatness at the end of chapter 2.
He admits to God.
I mean, not the
Right.
whole story with the.
Right.
With the
Okay, Okay, so what we're doing over here is just diagramming out the prokim we've done so far. We're skipping chapter 1 and we're starting with chapter 2. We're gonna just get the highlights in for each parak. So what we'll do over here is chapter
Build the
3.
statue. Everyone bow down. If we refuse, into the furnace.
Okay, so Jews are put in a death trap. Jews
Death trap.
in
That's familiar. That's nice familiar
Death trap.
territory.
Because they didn't listen to the king, miraculously saved. Miracle. Save.
Big golden statue.
No. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
There's a big golden statue. Big gold statue. And after the Jews are saved, so Nebuchadnezzar says, "Oh,
Praise
God
to
is
God.
super amazing, right?"
Praise to God.
King praises God. King praise God. Okay. Okay, let's get chapter 4. My boxes are supposed to be getting bigger and they're getting smaller. Okay. Chapter 4. That's Nebuchadnezzar has.
Here's a
this
proclamation
dream.
for all you dudes.
Right. So he has his dream. So the king has a dream that he's a tree.
Right.
King dream tree.
Went crazy, life
then
is
because
lousy,
he's-
now I'm back, God, praise God.
Right. So he has a dream that he's a tree. He can't interpret it. So again, can't understand. Daniel interprets that the king is haughty.
Gives some advice on how to.
Haughty king
That's important.
will go crazy. It happens. And then king is contrite and praises God.
And comes back and praises God.
King
The king has returned.
back. Praises God. Okay. That is 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
Let us go for chapter 5.
So now I'm going to show Isaiah story.
Big.
Yeah. No, 5 is Belshazzar, isn't it? It's
Right.
the-
5 is the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes-
So we
Yeah,
have
I'll get thrown.
Purim
Mishael and
banquet.
Azariah isn't here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, the writing on the wall.
Yeah. Hey, the Jews are downfall. Let's celebrate.
banquet.
Writing on the wall.
Weird apparition.
Daniel interprets.
Again, no one understands.
Queen
no
Mother.
one
Queen Mother.
can explain. Daniel. First, he gives him like that history lesson, like your father was haughty and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Daniel, history.
You guys are dead.
Don't be haughty.
Makes the stupidest mistake in the world.
Right.
Says, if anybody says you're the king, kill him.
Right. That's at the end. Okay.
That's
So
right, that's right.
right. So don't be haughty. And then
He died because he said if anybody
Vision.
tries to get in saying they're the king,
Oh, yeah.
then he goes down
Alright.
and you have to
pass.
believe him.
End of kingdom. End of.
That wasn't in the.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
Midrash he
That's
said.
Midrash.
Yeah.
Right. That's a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
Yeah, but he died then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did chapter 6 last week. What do we got for chapter 6? That's Darius, and
Darius.
Yeah.
he told everyone.
Comes in.
So what did he tell everybody? They made that rule, right? Everyone has to.
Lion's Den.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a rule.
Everyone's got to ask you for everything.
Right, you can't pray to your
There's
own
a,
God.
right. There's a rule. Daniel breaks the rule.
On purpose.
Breaks rule on purpose. Lion's Den. Miracle salvation.
Yeah. Bad is punished, evil is punished. Bad guys die.
Right, the advisors get killed.
Right. You don't read that.
Advisors killed. And then the king is...
Praises God.
King praises God.
What a surprise.
Praises. Okay, so we're about to get to chapter 7. I'm gonna give away the ending just so that this all makes sense. But so when we talked about the book in the beginning, we said the book is broken up into story time and then the visions, right? The book is also broken up in other really interesting and very clearly intentional ways. One is the language. So the first parak is in Hebrew, and chapters 8 through 12 are in Hebrew, but chapters 2 through 7 are in Aramaic. The reason it's so interesting that chapter 7 is in Aramaic is because it's Daniel's first person, right? We talked about the reason you would switch languages is to make it feel you're in the middle of story time, so you want it to feel like you're in exile. This when we go back to first person, the rest of Daniel's first person visions are all in Hebrew. The other reason, so you wouldn't expect chapter 7 to be in Hebrew, to be in Aramaic. You expect it to be in Hebrew, but it's not. It's in Aramaic. The other reason that chapter 7 is weird is because chronologically it's out of order. We're going to see, like from the very first pasuk, it actually takes place in the first year of Belshazzar. That's back before chapter 5, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that this story is being told to us after chapter 6 instead of before chapter 5, there has to be a reason for it being where it is, right? So let's get to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is Daniel has a vision. In his vision, there are four magical creatures. 4 creatures. He doesn't know what they are, so he has to ask a malach to explain it to him. Angel explains. Those 4 creatures represent, any guesses?
The
Kingdoms.
4 kingdoms.
You just said he has to ask.
Right.
Like the king did.
And then the end of the vision is going to be the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yemos Mashiach. Yemot.
This is chapter 2 all over.
Okay, I'm really glad that you
what
said
did
that.
he say?
It's chapter 2 all over again.
It's chapter 2 all over again. So once upon a time when we were doing the biblical criticism series, let me get the agenda everyone's way so we can actually see this. We talked about one of the ways that books in Tanakh are structured is with something called a chiastic structure, right? And just as a refresher, the letter chi in Greek is an X, right? So what you're going to see over here is exactly that. Chapter 2 and chapter 7 have the same themes. Then you're going to go, again, chapter 3 and chapter 6, and chapter 4 and chapter 5. And we can go through each one of these, right? But you can see how everything is laid out intentionally to parallel one another. So you have, in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar is the one that has the dream. He's really scared, doesn't understand it. Daniel has a vision. He's also really scared. We're going to read about the same words that Nebuchadnezzar uses about how discomforted he is. Daniel uses those same words. The king's not able to interpret it himself. He needs to get an angelic, holy person like Daniel to translate it for him. Over here, Daniel has no idea what's going on, so he has to get a malach to do that for him. The dream represents the 4 kingdoms. The animals represent the 4 kingdoms, with the end being the 5th kingdom is Yemos HaMashiach. The same thing will be taking place in our parak. If you go working our way backwards, so you have Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah are Jews that get thrown into a death trap. In chapter 6, you have Daniel, who, again, they broke the rule of the king, didn't bow. Daniel breaks the rule of the king by davening, gets thrown into either a fiery furnace or a lion's den. There's a miraculous salvation, including some sort of malach, angelic person in the fiery furnace or in the lion's den. The advisors that were out to get Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, they end up dying. Over here, you have the people who are out to get Daniel. They end up dying. The king praises HaKadosh Baruch Hu after that. Same thing going on over here. What's interesting about 4 and 5 is where there are parallels and where there are differences. So you have the king having a vision over here in 4, and you have the king seeing this weird apparition in 5. The difference between 4 and 5 really is that over here in 4, Nebuchadnezzar does teshuvah and he's kind of spared. He gets back to himself. Whereas in chapter 5, you don't have, there's no indication that Belshazzar does, Chatasi Avisi and whatever, and so he's knocked off, right? But it's the same basic idea that over here in 4, none of the other advisors have any idea what this dream means. Over here you have no one able to interpret the writing on the wall until Daniel shows up in both cases. He's told don't be haughty. Over here Daniel gives him the history. Remember, don't be haughty. You're being haughty having this party, right? And then at the end of chapter 4, that's the end of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. And then over here at the end of 5, we have the end of the Babylonian kingdom itself. So that's the chiastic structure of these prakim. That's why chapter 7 comes after chapter 6. That's why chapter 7 is in Aramaic as opposed to in Hebrew. That's sort of the whole structure that we have over. Does this make sense to everybody?
Yeah. Why is 1 not around?
Okay, so 1 doesn't fit into the paradigm. First of all, 1 it's almost like in music. Sometimes you'll have like they'll play the theme before the song. So 1 is really sort of an encompassing of the entire book, and then you get the 2 sections of the book. Section 1 is this, Aramaic, and then section 2 is Daniel. We mentioned, I don't want to forget this, that we talked about the parallels between Daniel and Yosef. So Rabbi Noor actually has a great article, essay on this, where he talks about how Yosef and Daniel in certain ways are proceeding in opposite directions. So Yosef starts with having his own dreams about his future and then eventually becomes the interpreter of the king's dreams. Here you have Daniel, who starts off with the interpretation of the king's dreams, and eventually he moves on the second half of the book to having his own visions.
They don't have to have the same, meaning 2 to 7, 3 to 6, 5, 4 to 5. You just have to have a match within the subset.
It's almost like an envelope. So the outer 2 connect, then the next 2, and then the middle 2. If I had drawn it like this, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Right.
then you would be going like that.
Right, got it. Cool.
So sometimes the way this is described a lot of times is A, B, C, and then C, B, A. Excuse me. Sometimes you'll get something, because it's supposed to be an X, there's a chiastic structure, so something over here, sometimes you'll get an extra chapter that doesn't have a parallel, and the reason it's designed this way is to point to that middle part, right? It's like X marks the spot. So you'll have times where you get this chiastic structure, there'll be parallels, and then there'll be one chapter in the middle that has an idea that, like by the building of the Mishkan. So there's a chiastic structure there, and then the center that doesn't have a parallel is about the luchos and the aron, right? And the whole point is to draw your attention to that pair because that's the most important part. Just like by an X, X marks the spot. That's what's going on over here. So the way that Sefer Daniel was built by the Anshe Knesset Agdola was to do this, not this version with the chapter in the middle, but the same idea.
And we see that across multiple books.
You see this. You see chiastic structure used in multiple books. You don't see it necessarily across one book to another. That I haven't seen. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen it.
What is the earliest Mepharshim that discuss this type of thing?
There are, to my knowledge. So let me abridge that. The Gemara says that when you find a topic at the beginning of a work and at the end of the work, that's telling you that that's the theme of what's inside. So you'll have Kohelet, you'll have the Torah starts with Chesed and ends with Chesed. So the theme of the Torah is this is the Chamishe Chumshei Torah. You have like HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking care of Adam and Chava, and then you have HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking care of Moshe and his burial. So the theme there is Chesed. You have this. It's not described as chiastic structure, but you'll have things like even the word MS. There are a lot of gematrias with the aleph being at the beginning and the taf being at the end and the mem in the middle, and you have things like that. But this concept of how this is designed was part of how things were written in the ancient world, but was not necessarily described this way by Meforshim until very recently, 1800s at the very earliest. Okay, we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, without further ado, we should probably start actually reading the parah. So since this is still in Aramaic, I'll break my teeth on this last parah, and next week I'm going to turn this over to you guys. So Bishnas Chada LeBelshazzar Melech Bavel. So this is in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Bavel. So Daniel Chalem Chaza v'Chezvei Reishe Al Mishkevei. So Daniel saw a dream, and he has this vision while he's in his bed. This is exactly the language that Nebuchadnezzar used when he had his dream about being in his bed. Badain Chelmuk Sab Reish Milan Amar. So he wrote down the dream, and now we're getting like the cliff notes. We're not getting the full. He didn't write down everything that happened in the dream, and you're actually going to see later on that we get details later in the parak about what we saw earlier in terms of the dream that he doesn't include the first time he talks about it. So that's the end of the third person narrative. So this is talking about Daniel as a character, and now we get Daniel first person. Ani Daniel V'Amar. So Daniel says the following: Chaze Havis Bechezve in Lelia. I saw the following at night. V'aru Arba Ruche Shmaya Migichon Liyom Rabba. And I saw these four winds, meaning like the four corners of the earth, their winds are stirring up the Yom Rabba, the great ocean. The Arba Chavon Ravarvan Salkon Min Yoma Shanyan Da Minda. And there are these four animals that are incredible. They're Ravarvan, we're going to see they translate it almost any way they want. It means like greater and greater. Immense, thank you. Salkan min Yoma. So they're coming out of the ocean, and they're different one from the other. So you get a little bit of this, an allusion to Maisa Bereshis, right? You have Tohu Vavohu, you have the Ruach Merachefes al Pnei Amayim, and it's almost like a creation story over here. These four animals. Kadmaisa Aryeh. The first one is like a lion, the Gathin din Nasharla, and it has eagle's wings on it. So none of the things we're going to be describing, except maybe the bear, are
actual animals.
Right, are actual animals. These are
chimeras.
Yeah, chimeras, mythological creatures. This is like okay, and I should sort of preface. All the Meforshim have different interpretations of what these animals actually stand for. The Malach who explains it does not name like, okay, this animal represents this kingdom, and that animal represents that kingdom. The Meforshim are unanimous, are almost unanimous on certain ones. They differ on the last one for sure. But if you're a little confused, you're not alone.
That image of the lion with eagle's wings has been used in modern times, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying within
in Judaism or other
Judaism.
that I don't know.
No?
You've seen it before? I haven't seen that.
I don't know. That sounds.
The kingdom that it's supposed to represent is not a Jewish kingdom.
I'm gonna check. It's not
We're
supposed
going in order.
There's lions in represented in Judaism.
Yeah.
You gotta fly by.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but there's not. I don't see lions with wings.
Okay,
What is
so
the first of the four kingdoms? Is it
You
Babel
tell
or
me.
Egypt? It's
Well,
fine.
so usually if we're talking Parak Bet, it's Bavel.
Babel, right? Now it's fine.
Right. And we spoke last week about how Bavel is represented by the lion.
So we're in order.
Right. So Chose Haves Ad Dimitiru Gapa Unetilas Min Ara Bial Raglin Ke'anash Hakimas Ulavavenosh Yahivle. So I looked, and the wings got knocked off of this thing, and it was picked up off the ground, so it's not on all fours anymore. Now it's walking on two legs, and it's given the heart, meaning the intelligence of a person. So what does that remind you of?
Creation. Adam Rishon.
Well, who was representative of Babel that acted animal-like and then was given right Nebuchadnezzar? That's chapter 4.
Chapter 4, right?
Right. He was first he was turned into an animal, and then we even had this same language of Levav Enosh, right? That he was given he was brought back to his senses by giving his human capacity back. But what all this means, the Malach does not address, and it's certainly not clear why the wings are removed. Does that mean that it's not able to move anymore? Is it like a positive sign or a negative sign that it's now going from being on all fours to being on two legs like a human being? Not clear. the Aru Cheva Achari Tinyana Damiladov. So the second animal that he sees is different, and it's like a bear. The Listar Chan Hakimas Utlas Ilin Bipume Shina. So it's like raised up on one side, and in its mouth there are these three bones. The Chain Amrinle, and they whoever they is say to it, Kumi, get up, Achuli Basar Sagi, go eat a lot of meat. Any takers on who the bear might be?
It should be Parsamana.
Right. So right. So Persia, the Gemara describes the Persians as being bear-like. That they eat like a bear, they roam around like a bear, they're like fleshy like a bear. The raised up on one side might be as a reference to Madai, and it's also not clear who these three the bones or the teeth, whatever this thing has in its mouth, are. It could be that these are three cities that they conquered.
This is a regular bear, though. It just has bones in his mouth.
Regular bear with bones.
Well, it says Damyan.
That right.
Damya the dove. It's sort of the appearance of a bear. Like it is bear-like.
Bear, yes, that's fair. Okay. So after that, he sees something that is again like a leopard. The law gapin arba, and it has on its back four wings. Gapin arba the of al gaba, and it has these four wings on its back. The arba roshin le chevasa the shaltan yahivle, and it has four heads.
Stop right here.
And it's put in charge.
Justifiable.
Why?
4 heads.
What's wrong with 4 heads?
Right.
4 wings, 4 heads.
Right. So there's a lot of four symbolism in the book in general. So most of the Meforshim will tell you this is Yavan. This is Greece. After Alexander of Macedonia dies, so his kingdom is split up into 4 different rulers: the Seleucids, the Ptolemaic. They're called the Diadochi. So that could be what is being referenced over here by the 4 heads. Yeah, we're going to see more about that in a minute. Basar Dana. Now we come to Chazehevas v'Chezvei Lelia. So it's not clear if this is now a second dream during the same night, or it's part of the first thing. Va'aru cheva rivia, and now the 4th animal comes. Dechila v'imtani v'takifa yatira, and it is like very scary, very powerful. This is the first time that he's really described like the beyond just what the animal is, what it's about, like what's his reaction. It's fearsome, and it's strong. Vishinayan di parzella ravravon, and it has super powerful iron teeth. Achla umedak umadeka ushara beragla rafsa. It eats, it crushes, and stomps things with its feet. Vihi mishanim min kol chevasa dikadma v'karnayin asar la, and it's different than any other animal. He can't even figure out what this thing is. Sadia Gon says maybe he saw an elephant, and he's just never seen an elephant before, so that's why he couldn't quite figure out what this thing is. It seems more likely that this is just some magical creature. This is not like a real. I mean, the other ones were like sort of relatable. You know, it was an animal that he's seen before with
like
maybe
a lion. It's
right.
like a bear.
This
sort
one
of
he
like
can't
a leopard.
even come up with. You know, it's kind of armadillo-like. No, he has no. So it's different. Sorry.
It's a platypus.
Right. Well, this one, the Karnayan Asarlan has 10 horns. So usually horns are a symbol for Malchus, and we're going to get into what kingdom this is, and which kingdom had 10 rulers, etc. Okay. Mistakel Havis v'Karnaya. Now he's looking at the horns on this last animal. Va'olu Karen Achari. And now an 11th horn grows onto this animal. Ze'era, and it's smaller than the rest. Silkas Beinehen, it's among those horns. Utlosa min karnaya kadmaisa, and 3 of the horns that had been there from before is akara min kadma, got knocked out as this 11th little horn is growing up. 3 more get knocked out. The alu ainin ke'ene enosha bekarna da, and this horn now has eyes on it, like the eyes of a man. Ufum memalil rabravan, and its mouth is speaking. Over here they translate rabravan as arrogantly. It just means like more and more powerfully.
This is terrifying.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah.
You can see why Daniel is totally freaked out. Choseh hevis ad the karsavon ramiv. I looked on, and thrones, plural, were set. Now, where is he looking? Where are these thrones? We're going to get to this in a minute, because it gets even more unusual. The Atik Yomin Yasiv, and the Atik Yomin, the oldest of days, sits. Levushe Kitlag Chivar, his clothing is like snow white. Ushar Reshe Amar Nake, and his hair is like combed wool from a lamb. Karse Shavivin di Nur, his throne is made out of fire, and Galgilohi Nur Dalik, and its wheels are blazing with fire. This is what Daniel is seeing. Feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, Atik Yomin is a term for God, isn't it?
Right. So the reason you know Atik Yomin is a term for God is because right, you're from Shalashunas, right? This term you'll find also in some Kabbalistic texts, but this is the source for it. This is the only time we have a Kadosh Baruch Hu described this way in Tanakh. There are 2 thrones over here, and this is where we start to get into, and we'll get into more of it later, but this is where the Christians start wondering who is this second throne for. And the Gemara actually asks this question. So I will...
Meaning like the sun?
Right. So the Gemara says as follows, and this is in Sanhedrin and in Chagiga. Adi Karsavon Ramiv. So what is the implication of that pasuk? So Ma'igila Meimar. So the Gemara says Echad Lo, one for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ve'echad Lo David, and one is for David. Tanya Echad Lo ve'echad Lo David, Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So that is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that the reason there are 2 thrones is because one is for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and one is for David. Amar le Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Akiva, ad masai ata ose shchina chol. Akiva, how long are you going to make the shchina, meaning make HaKadosh Baruch Hu chol, not holy, meaning you're equating him. You're saying there's 2 thrones. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's throne, and then another throne which is as equal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as not, and that's for someone else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Right.
How could you do that? Ela echad ledin ve'echad letzedakah. So one throne is for when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the attribute of din, and another is for when he wants to be seen through the attribute of tzedakah. So the Gemara asks, Kabbalah minei o lo Kabbalah minei?
Because different times of the day, right?
Different times of the day, we say that he's omed from kisei din and machnis the kisei rachamim. So Kabbalah minei o lo Kabbalah minei, says the Gemara. Did Rabbi Akiva accept this argument or not? Tashma d'tanya echad ledin ve'echad letzedakah divrei Rabbi Akiva. We have another brisa where Rabbi Akiva says exactly that one is for din and one is for tzedakah. Amar le Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Akiva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, this is not the first time you'll find this in Tanakh, in Chazal. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah kind of gives it to Rabbi Akiva by calling him Akiva. Malach etzel Haggadah. What are you doing even talking about these things? Klach etzel Negayim v'oholos. You should be in brisk. Go learn Negayim. Go learn oholos. You have no business talking about Agadata in the first place. What is this really talking about? Ela echel lekisei ve'echel lesarf safe. I'm not reading this right. Lesharf raf. One is for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the other is for his feet. It's a footstool. There's no 2 attributes. It's all for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kisei le shibalav sharaf reif lahadom raglav. The kisei is for him to sit, and the sharaf reif is something like that, right? Now that is not the straight reading of the pasuk because it's described as two thrones, right?
Right.
That you don't have a throne for your feet unless
you
you're
tip one down
Yeah.
and then you put your feet up. I mean,
Okay, but the point being over here that you can already see from Chazal a little bit there was some angst about how we're going to interpret this pasuk, and we want to make sure that it's not. What did they say that Akiva was making the Shechina Chol? You have to be very careful about how you interpret this pasuk. So that is pasuk 9. They bring these two thrones, and we're going to see later on what these thrones are for. And then we get a description of the Merkava, so to speak, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is described as Atik Yomim, and you see it goes from he looks first at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then he looks at the clothing, then he looks at the kisei, and everything is there in white. Nahar di Nur, so the river that's of fire, Noged v'nafek min kadmohi alfin yishamshune. So from that fiery stream come thousands upon thousands of servants for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'rivu ravun kadmohi yakumun, and many tens of thousands are now standing before him to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Dina Yisiv v'sifram psichu. The court is in session. The books are opened.
sounds scary.
Yeah, well, it is. Chazeh Havis. So Daniel is watching all of this. Ba'adayin min milaya rav ravosa dikarna memalale. And while he's watching this, that horn that is speaking continues just spewing words. It continues talking. And Chazeh Havis ad diketilas chebsa v'huva gishma v'yehivas Likedas Esha. So I looked on, and they killed the animal. Its body was destroyed, and it was dumped in the fire. That's the end of this arrogant fourth animal. Ushar Chevasa He'ediv Shaltanahon Ve'archa B'chayin Yehivas Lahon Adzman V'idan. And these, what about the other animals? So they were allowed to continue with their ways. They were no longer in charge, but they were allowed to remain alive for Adzman V'idan. We're going to see this term used frequently in Daniel. It's essentially a vague term for a certain amount of time. We don't know what Zman and Idan means. It just means time and season. We have time for one or two more
going.
psukim? Okay.
It's only 9:42. We could go till 10. I don't know.
Okay.
It's your call.
So I saw all this in a vision at night. V'yaru im anone shmaya, and there's one there among the clouds in heaven, kibar enosh, who looked like a human being. Ose have, so he comes. The ad atik yomaya mata, and he reaches all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, up to atik yomin. Ukadmohi hakruvhi, and he was presented to be close in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lei yehiv shaltan v'yikar umalchu v'chol amamayu umayu v'lishnaya. We've had this term before. Every nation, this person who is presented before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's given rulership over every language, every nation. Lei falchun, they all have to serve him. Shaltane shaltan alam, he is given shlita and rulership forever. Di lo ye'edei umalchuse di lo tischabal. It's never going to stop. His kingship will never be destroyed. That's just what we had with the at the end of the four kingdoms. We had the rock that came, knocks them all down, and then that's the Yemos HaMashiach, right?
Yeah.
So Iskeris Ruche Ona Daniel Bego Nidne the Chedzve Roshi Yivahalunani. So as for me, Daniel, I was very disturbed by everything that I'm seeing. My Reshi Yivhalaluni is the same language that we had by Nebuchadnezzar. He's completely unsettled by what he saw, because this is monsters and fairy tale land, right? This is not something anyone has ever experienced before in Tanakh. And he doesn't know what any of this means, right? He sees all this, and he's usually the guy that knows what stuff means. Now, in a minute they're going to tell him a little bit what this means, and so you kind of now can look back at chapter 5 when he shows up to Belshazzar, and you understand a little bit more why he's so kind of sure of what's going on, because he's seen the end, right? We know from here that he knows what's going to end here, and we'll see that inside right now. So Kirves al-Chad min Ka'amaya v'yatziva eve mine al kol dina. So I approach one of the people that are over there, these attendants, and I ask him, what is all of this? The Amar li pshar milaya yehodu nami. And he tells me, and he explains what I'm seeing. So again, we have vision. Not the person who sees the vision is not able to understand it, so they have to ask someone holier than them. In Parak Beis, that was the king asking Daniel. In our Parak, it's Daniel asking this malach or this attendee. Ilain chayvasa ravravasa diinin arba. These 4 animals are arba malkin yakumun min ara. These are the 4 kingdoms that will arise out of the earth. The kablun malchusa kadishe elyonin, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to give them kingship. V'yachsanun malchusa al ad alma v'ad alam almaya. And then sorry, I had this wrong. And the Holy One of this is the Hakadosh Baruch Hu will receive the kingdom, and he will possess the kingdom forever and ever. So Adayin Sivis. So that's the explanation that he's given. He's not told which kingdom is what, how long one is going to go on for. Okay, we'll get through a little bit more of this, and then I'll leave you with a question to ponder. Adayin Sivas Liyatsova al Chevsa Riviaisa. So I really want to know what's going on with the 4th beast. He's like, okay, I can deal with 4-headed leopards with wings, but what's going on with this 4th thing? The Havis Shanim in Kulhon, the Chila Yasira, Shina, the Parzel, the Tifra, the Nachash. This animal is freaking me out. Its teeth are made out of iron. Its claws are made out of bronze. We didn't know before that its claws were made out of bronze. The first time we met this animal, that wasn't described, right? We talked at the beginning. Daniel's only giving you Rashi Prakim. Achla manka u sharabaraglahi rafsa, and it eats everything and it stomps on everything. What's up with that? Says Daniel. The al karnaya sar di roshe, the achri di silkas unafale min kadma tlas, and then it had these 10 horns. He's sort of like you can hear him talking to this malach, like, and it had this, and it saw, and then this happened, and what is that about? And the 3 fell out. The kind of dichain, the einin le ufum malu raverum the chesve rav min chavrosa, and it's talking.
Right?
What?
Didn't devour each other.
No, the animal was devouring whatever it's devouring.
Not the first 3.
No, that's a really important point. We're going to get to that at the end. Chose heves the kind of dichain avda karav in kadishin v'yochle lahon. And I looked on, and this horn, this is new information, this horn made war in Kadishin v'yachle lahon with the holy ones. Unclear if this is Malachim, the Jewish people, it's not clear. And he wins. The horn of this animal wins out ad the asa atik yomai until Hakadosh Baruch Hu shows up. The Dina Yehiv, and that was what the judgment scene that we had before was. Hakadosh Baruch Hu showing up after the holy ones are overcome by this animal with this horn. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu judges that animal. Lekadisha Elyonin, v'zimna mata umalchusa hechsinu kadishin, and for in the time to come, Hakadosh Baruch Hu will take possession of that kingdom. Came Amar. Let's see how much more is in this passage.
Only like 5 more psukim.
No, it's more.
Okay, so let's leave it for now.
I can't take anymore.
Come on.
We're in the
Come
middle.
on, let's finish the
way.
parak. This is like, this is good stuff.
I cannot take anymore. I won't be able to sleep tonight.
We're in the reality of it.
Yeah,
it's
this is
our-
where
it's
we're
our
at.
goals.
Come on, this is current events.
Yeah, you're just reading the.
Moshe
Okay,
sent
well-
the text, and he
Okay,
actually lived up to his
Come
text.
on.
We'll pick up, yeah, right? I told you nothing to do the same. Okay, we'll pick up from Pasuk Chav Gimel. The one thing I want to leave you with is to think about the differences between the vision that Daniel had and the vision that Nebuchadnezzar had as it pertains to these four kingdoms. The similarities and the differences I want to talk about next time, and God willing, we'll pick up from Pasuk Chav Gimel.
Very nice.
You don't have to bother us.